Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today look at this for a lineup. Ian Conroy, all the way from New Zealand. Liam Carrigan, based in Japan. And Lawrence Conley in the Skylark. How is the Skylark coming on, Lawrence? Let's start with important points. It's getting something of a reputation.
It is indeed, mate. You know, we've had a few sessions in here, two kegs of
such a reputation that it's been stunned into silence by the looks of it.
I can hear you just fine, Lawrence. I can hear you fine. On you go, mate. Like you said, sessions. Are we talking music sessions or drinking sessions?
There was some music after. There was some community singing and some Irish tunes after the matches, sometimes before as well. Big Chris Rafferty brought up his guitar, so yeah, it's pretty good, mate. You know, life's good as a Celtic fan. You know.
Yeah.
Brendan's winning matches. Yeah. The recruitment team, Toshin team are certainly moving out. The players would want to move out. Just a wee bit eager to see some people coming in now.
Yeah, I think we always are. But there's been more of a. I'll come to you first, Ian. There's been more of a cautious approach after that initial deluge of players coming in. Brendan's first summer transfer window, there was 9 or 10 came in. One of them being a legacy player in Awata, who's since left. But since then, there's been more of a cautious approach by Brendan Rodgers and his recruitment team. This, of course, is his first window with Paul Tisdale in the building, Ian. And it does look as though we're being far more cautious about bringing players into the football club.
Yeah, but I've said this before. It's and Happy New Year to everyone. First time back this year. So, it's I've said this before. It's kind of that we hope it's going to be that sort of natural evolution, that gentle evolution. And it's, you know, we've got Jorn Arne Engels in, and it's sort of, he was a record transfer. It's that kind of quality we want now, and I think he's really shown what he's capable of in the past few weeks after a little bit of a dip, some might say. So whether it's caution or whether it's just actually that kind of laser focus, another sort of term we've used before, but that laser focus where, you know, only the best will do within our budget. So I'm all for that, you know, it's absolutely all for it. I really think that, I'd love to see, you know, if it was younger players that we had, like a conveyor belt coming through. You know, you look at the likes of City and things like that, look at the riches they have, like to Chelsea and these sort of bigger EPL teams that have this embarrassment of riches, hoover up all the best young talent, have their academies and then seem to sell them on. I'd love to see Celtic, you know, bring players through as we used to, you know, back in the sort of 60s and 70s, you know, and maybe that's a bit of a rose-tinted spectacle look, but I'd love to see that kind of get to a point where we can produce our own players. But until we get to that point, I think I'm interested to see how Tisdale sort of gets through his first window. Obviously, it's a big moment for us. So he promises a lot, you know, being the football doctor. So it's let's hopefully that it's a harmonious partnership, and he does the business for Brendan and the club and for us fans.
Yeah, Paul Tisdale, friends with Paul Smith, likes the clobber, likes wearing a different hat when he's standing on the sidelines, but he won't be on the sidelines, Liam, because he is, in a business sense, wearing a completely different hat. He's running the football department. Part of that's recruitment. Part of it is building some kind of academy that will enhance the riches, because it's been a massive disappointment for a number of years that the lack of youth coming through. And it was good at the weekend to see Daniel Cummins on the bench, wasn't it? He finally got that opportunity. He didn't get on the park, but it's another step closer, isn't it?
Yeah, I think he was just unlucky. If we'd have been 2 or 3 up in that game and comfortable, I think he would definitely have come on for the last half an hour or so. But just the way that game went, you know, it was just one of those that we had to fight right up until the last couple of minutes, and you can't really be bringing young players into that kind of atmosphere because, I mean, yeah, sure, you're setting them up to possibly be the hero, but at the same time, if he misses a sitter or whatever, you know, that can ruin a player's career. You know, that's the horrible thing.
The moment when the ball dropped to Johnny Kenny, we were all kind of sitting there going, right, this is what it's all about. You get a young player, bringing him over from Ireland. Now, the thing is, Lawrence, there's players who are brought over from Ireland and go right into the academy system. Johnny was slightly different. He had played first-team football at Sligo Rovers. He comes to Celtic, and we put him out on loan when that ball drops him, you're just thinking that's fairy tale stuff. He just slots it into the back of the net. It was a combination of stage fright and a really, really poor bounce. The pitch was a bit dodgy because of the weather conditions. But that was the moment. And that could have been Daniel Cummins. I mean, do you think it was a flip of the coin? You're looking at a guy who's come back on loan, having scored 20 goals for Shamrock Rovers and European goals against an 18-year-old Daniel Cummins, who we hope will sign a new contract this month as well.
I think it's probably down to Johnny's experience. His first team experience is probably the shout above that. But listen, on that game, both of them probably should have got minutes if VAR had been doing their job. No, Hatate's through, his left shoulder gets pulled back.
Not much being made about that one, Lawrence. Yep.
The VAR didn't take too long looking at it, did they? You know, but it's a stick-on penalty. You know, they put us on easy street, and the boys probably would have get, you know, a bit of time there. But I'm sure, you know, the big game's young boys, so I'm sure maybe Daniel will maybe get a chance tonight. You know, if we get a few good goals up against Dundee, Brendan will want people to be fresh for a young boys game. It's probably the biggest game of the season. We'll win that, and it guarantees us we're through the next stages. But hopefully Daniel signs. It's great to see him on. Now, some of that's been down to injury, let's be honest, and some of it's been down to keeping players fresh for the young boys games. But I guess that it's kind of, we could have done with the winter break, but probably a side benefit is these two boys getting involved with the first team squad that we've not had the winter break. We've had to use the depth. And listen, Johnny Kenny, he looked okay when he came on. You know, he looked quick, eager. He was closing down. Yeah, a goal would have put a different complexion on it, but I'm sure it won't be the last time you see him in the first team.
What I loved about the unique angle, which for me is hands down the best bit of content the Celtic team do, the social media team, the unique angle, you love it. You always see something a wee bit different. And it was the goal for McCowan, which Johnny Kenny played a part in, of course. I think he finally got the assist virtue of his backside, but he got the assist. And it was the amount of players that went up to Johnny Kenny to congratulate him for his part in the goal. Big Scalesy was right up there as well. So it's great to see that we're bringing a young player back. And what an advert it would have been for loan players. It's not always the case, Ian, for a loan player to basically go out with a view to leave it. It's like the first step out of the building, isn't it, for many, many players? And I'm thinking a lot of the loanees that are out at the moment and leaving, other than Admira Waka, will probably leave the football club. We've had successes. We've had Chris Ayer and Liam, the aforementioned Liam Scales, Callum McGregor, Ryan Christie. I'm hoping Johnny Kenny can be one of those players. I think just, you know, and it's a very simple thing, I think physicality always plays its part in Scottish football, and I think that's one thing we probably need to work on with Johnny, because he's got the height, but he seems a bit slight, doesn't he?
Yeah, I haven't seen too much of him, but I obviously saw the highlights of the game at the weekend. In terms of the players going out, it could go one of two ways, I suppose. It could be, you know, part of, you know, they could have upped their game in training, and it's kind of the next part of their development to go out and play. You know, if they're not going to get games, you know, like they go and play against, you know, grown-ups, go and play against men somewhere. You know, like the couple of players that we sent to Aberdeen is a good example. You know, they both came back and sort of got in the team and did well. It's a shame to see Odin Holm go out. I kind of had a real kind of like for him whenever I've seen him play, and it's not been that many minutes. I've really liked seeing him play. But yeah, it's one of those. But Johnny Kenny, you know, scoring goals is what it's all about. And, you know, the fact that he's done it in Europe, it's not just been the League of Ireland, it bodes well. And the point you've made before about him scoring the goal, maybe it could have been a Tony Watt jinx. You know, if he scored that goal, it might have he might have put his career on the expectation levels unduly high straight away. So I think it was like a nice sort of ease into it. You know, getting that assist and just gently announcing his arrival.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't always work out the way you think it does. And someone actually brought this up here, Tony Watt. The reason Celt88 brought it up is because there was a question posed by McLaughlin P. Who was the last striker we produced? Maloney. Every time we have this conversation, McLaughlin P, sorry. I always say Maloney isn't really a striker, though, is he? He never played like an out-and-out striker for Celtic. He was in the forward line, but he wasn't a centre forward, was he? Sean Maloney. He did score over 50 goals for Celtic, that over 2 spells. Sean Maloney, if you're looking at his contribution to Celtic, obviously he went to Aston Villa for a couple of seasons in between. But in terms of seasons, let's have a look. 2, 4, 7, 8, 9, 10. Sean Maloney played 11 seasons for Celtic. That's astonishing. And he scored 52 goals for the club. Craig Beattie is often mentioned as a player who came through. He played 4 seasons at the football club, scoring 16. And Mark Burchill did spend a bit of time in the first team, but I think he left prematurely. Otherwise, he would have scored the 50 goals. I reckon you need to get to be a goal-scoring striker coming through the ranks. I'm going to stick with it. Jerry Craney, Liam. Jerry Craney was the last striker who scored goals for Celtic that we produced, and he left in 1994, Jerry Craney. So, I mean, it is an issue, right? It is an issue, and I know that Johnny Kenny didn't come through our system, but indeed, Daniel Cummins did. And I'm going to bring this up from Kevin, because Kevin and I, over the years, a wee bit like Lawrence and I, we don't mind crossing swords from time to time and disagreeing. Kevin is firm in his belief that Cummins won't play for the Celtic first team. I'm going to disagree with him. I'm going to disagree with him, Liam. I'm going to say that he's a player that can do nothing more than he has done. It's a legacy issue in terms of Celtic. We're in Scottish football, there isn't a reserve league. We can't play the kids anywhere else than in the B team. He always shows up well in the youth games in Europe. I think he will get a crack at the first team. And, you know, what better time than now with all these games coming up, Liam, and maybe resting this player or that player for, I say, the big games. Not that we're taking any of them for granted, but young boys obviously is in our sights. I'm going to say he will play, Liam. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think he will play, but how much he'll play is the question. Because is it going to be someone like Jerry Craney who's going to come in and actually be a part of the team for a number of years? Or is it going to be a Mark Burchill or Tony Watt scenario where he scores one really memorable goal, but ultimately that's all that we'd really remember them for? You know, I hope it's the former and not the latter, but I think such is the pressure now for immediate success that it might be the latter.
You know this, I think both of them would be tremendous guests for This Is Acsom. Now, Jerry Craney, I've got a wee theory on this one, Lawrence. He's a player that came through the ranks, and I remember at the time, you know, I used to read the Celtic View cover to cover, as well as Not the View. Read that every month, Celtic View every week, obviously. And you always had a sense of the crop of youngsters coming through back then, Lawrence, because there was all the match reports, pictures, etc. And Craney was coming through on the back of a player called Jerry Britton, who was a goal machine for the reserve, like a proper goal machine. I remember in a friendly hit, he scored, like he went into double figures. I think he scored 10 goals in a game. It was incredible. But Jerry Craney came in and he scored straight off the bat. And my take on him is he is almost sullied by the times in which he played. We were not a good side. We didn't have any success. But you look at his record, you look at the fact that he scored goals, important goals against Rangers, Sporting Lisbon, Cologne, Borussia Dortmund, and then when Celtic really, really needed the money, 2 months before Fergus took over, incidentally, we sold him for £500,000 and he went to Portsmouth. 2 months later, Lawrence, Fergus McCann comes in and everything changes. He was only 23 when we sold him. By 1998, and by the way, Craney had been a very important part, a goal-scoring part of the Scotland under-21 team who got to the semi-finals of the European Championships, right? That great side with Phil O'Donnell and Ray McKinnon and all those guys. By 1998, age 27, Celtic are winning the league. Scotland are way on the World Cup at the finals, right? And Jerry Craney's playing second-tier football for St Mirren. Sliding doors, Lawrence, sliding doors, mate.
Yeah, I think he was very unlucky. And let's be honest, was Lou McCarry the best judge of a player? I mean, he's bringing in guys like Wayne Biggins with Jerry there. You're like, come on. And definitely knew where the back of the net was. He done okay at Portsmouth. I think went to Man City. It kind of went downhill from City, didn't it? City, St Mirren. It was Clydebank as well. I can't remember. He had a few
Wraith
clubs.
Rovers. Yeah.
Wraith Rovers, a few clubs. Whether the current crop can make it. Listen, strikers have probably got more pressure on it and deliver it than anyone else because we need the goals. probably the benefit of being in Brendan's team is he likes to spread the goals about. But if you look through every position, what players really came in and held his position at that age? You know, how tolerant are we as fans when maybe not this season, but when the league's so close and there's league challenges, can we really afford to put people in? It's maybe going to cost us points. Probably this season, it looks like we're going to be able to do that. You'd hope that Kerry and Cummins both move it, save us a fortune. But Jerry Craney, I said he came in, boy from Coatbridge, scored a bat. What was it, 1 and 3 or something? I think
yeah, it might even have been better. You know, when we start adding up minutes, we talk about minutes now, Lawrence, rather than
look at that.
Yeah,
it'd be better than 1 and 3 if it was looking at minutes. But for a young player breaking into the team, average of 1 and 3. 1 and 3 is a good average for a Celtic striker. So for a boy to come through the ranks and deliver that, and it wasn't the best of teams. Decent midfield, didn't we? And then with Tom Boyd at the back, and you Collins, Grant, McStay. You were kind of struggling, weren't you? At times, but I thought he was great and he came through. And yes, it's one of those ones. If it stayed, I think Tommy Burns would definitely have developed him. He would have. Tommy was good at developing players. So, yeah.
The first player under Tommy that was a signing, it was a bit like Mick McCarthy. Remember, Davy Hay signed Mick McCarthy, right? But he's always lumped into the Billy McNeil Centenary year because obviously he never played until the new season. But it was David Hay's final signing for Celtic. And I don't know, and I've watched an interview recently with Mick McCarthy. He doesn't even know if Billy McNeil was in contact with Celtic at the time, having managed them at Manchester City, to okay the deal. But in any case, Andy Walker was a wee bit like that, remember? So Lou Macari wanted to sign Walker back from Bolton Wanderers. He had a great run of form at Bolton. Lou Macari wanted to sign him back, went to a transfer tribunal, and I think we were ordered to pay just over £500,000 for Andy Walker at the time. And you ask yourself, by that point, Walker had lost a bit of pace because of the injuries. He wasn't really prolific in his second spell at Celtic. We'd have probably just been better keeping Jerry. And by the way, I'm going to try and get Jerry Craney on this show. I think he would be brilliant on the Friday night show. Don't know if he wants to talk about Celtic, but we shall find out, Lawrence.
Still involved in football, isn't he? He's up at St Johnstone, so yes, he's still very much involved. He'd be a great guest, give you an insight into that. That was probably the last team we had a number of guys that were supporters that had been on buses, group of players in the first team that all had that journey through the ranks, wasn't it? We don't really see the majority of the team having that anymore.
No, you're right. The funniest example of that, or the strangest example of that, Ian, was in the 94-95 season, right? Now, you remember, it ended well because we beat Airdrie in the cup final. Peter Grant, man of the match. Van Hooijdonk with that goal. Tosh, Lawrence's favourite Celt, Tosh McKinley with a brilliant cross. And John Martin, the scab in goals, letting it in. So it was a great day all round, right? And it was the first trophy we had won in 6 years. Now, the thing with that season is it was a tough one, right? Hampden Park was our home ground for the season, but I always remember the Rangers 3-0 game. You know, that meaningless fixture that we always won back in the day, right? So we beat them 3-0. And going into the game, I went to the bus and we used to get picked up in, it was either Valleyfield or Blair Hall in the 5 villages. And there was a gentleman, if you're tuning in, I hope you're well, Gavin Potter, Gav, good footballer in his own right, but his 2 wee brothers played, right? So the middle one, Brian, he played with Wraith Rovers. Brian was the goalie that saved the penalty in the semi-final of Coca-Cola Cup against Airdrie. Was it Jimmy Sanderson? My mind's playing tricks on me, but it was Airdrie. He saves the penalty that gets Wraith Rovers into the Coca-Cola Cup final, which of course we know what happened then, right? And I always remember jumping on that bus at the corner. The Valley Bar was there, the chapel was there, so all the dads would go to the Valley Bar while the mums went to the chapel. And on the corner, there's Gavin Potter and his brother Brian, and Brian had the Celtic scarf on. I always remember that because he got Wraith Rovers into that cup final. Later on that season, he's gone through to Celtic Park to watch Celtic. Gav, if you remember that, let me know. Brian might want to deny it. I remember it. It's in my mind's eye. That was the strangest one. But you're right, Lawrence, you would go from a supporters bus to the first team. And that's what happened with Kieran Tierney. And I think we've lost a lot over the years, Ian. Now, people might say, but what did they go and do? There's a sweet spot in the development of a footballer, isn't there, where they need first-team experience. If they don't get it, I think they can hit a ceiling and they don't develop.
Absolutely. It's imperative. And I think a lot of us question why, when they've done away with the reserve leagues, it was a massive own goal. I think, that I think sort of the youth football and that pathway to a first team is more difficult. With the old reserve league, you had that blend of youth and experience where you had the sort of the older pros who were injured or whatever, or maybe not just on the fringes of the first team, and playing with these younger players, and bringing them through. So we've lost that, but you have to. It's been shown with the guys, especially the ones that went to Aberdeen. Is the most recent examples. Chris Off-Ayer at Kilmarnock. You need to be playing to that standard week in, week out to have any chance, and you're not going to get it at Celtic really because of the expectation to win every game. So there's that pressure, that it could be counterproductive where that young player goes in and he doesn't get the time unless you've got a lot of injuries or your club's going through a bit of a crisis. At a big club like Celtic, you're not going to get first team chances that often with your parent club. So I'm all for getting them loaned out rather than sort of playing in the Highland League. Getting them out and playing against ultra competitive, as competitive as it can be, because it has shown in the past that it can land you in good stead for getting into that first team.
No, you're right, and it's a legacy issue which I think Brendan Rodgers has inherited it. Various other managers have inherited it, and it would take a long time, I think, to get to the point where you've got 2 or 3 graduates coming through every season, which I think is like the objective of having a youth academy. We're certainly not meeting that at the moment. Let's have a look at some of the comments coming through before we turn our attention to this evening's game against Dundee. We have Kevin Mullen, afternoon Acsom. Apart from the Rangers game, we have been very professional in January. Big one next week, beat Young Boys. Well, absolutely, yeah. I'm pretty sure there'll be one eye on this. We're also going to be focusing on some of the comments made by Brendan Rodgers yesterday at the press conference, and in particular, comments about people who might want to leave Celtic. I found that really interesting. Now, we've also got Ultra Wido. We should buy a League Two team. We've kind of mentioned that before, Liam. I don't see there being an issue where, a club in the past, we had a situation with Gretna who went out of business. We were never going to buy Rangers before they went out of business. We've got Inverness, Cali Thistle and Dumbarton at the moment who are obviously in administration. And you look at that and think, well, financially, Celtic could do that. But I think they would need to, loosen up on the rules, wouldn't they, on dual ownership before that was allowed.
Yeah, well, the thing is, though, one of the aspects with the youth development, which I think ties into that we've maybe not really touched on yet, is the financial aspect of it, because we have produced a few good youth players in recent years, and they've been poached by top European clubs, Bayern Munich, etc. Mm-hmm. And nothing against Bayern, they've got to look for the best players they can find for their setup, but it's telling that Craney left us in 1994 and Bosman came in 1995. Yeah. And since then, we have not been able to produce youth players consistently. And it's because of the freedom of contract. You cannot put like a youth team player on like a 10-year contract. So the minute he hits a certain age, if a big European club just swipes him up and puts him in their academy, there's nothing you can do. So it's got to a point where if you're a business person, purely a business person, which, let's face it, the Celtic board are primarily business people, as are the people who own most football clubs these days. It's maybe getting to a point now where it's more trouble than it's worth financially to actually have a youth set up, because if you produce these great players, there's nothing to stop bigger clubs from just coming in and poaching them.
You look at the 2 last season, Liam, and I'm not putting Millwall or Watford as one of the European giants that you refer to, because we've been, we've lost players in the past. If you even want to go back to Islam Farouz, Chelsea, Liverpool, Bayern Munich, like you say. But last season we had 2 players who obviously there was a commitment by the football club, probably to the age. Lawrence might know better, but I think Rocco had been at Celtic pre-10. I think he was like 8 or 9 at Celtic. And you get that point where they've been at the football club 8, 9, sometimes 10 years. and all you're getting is a couple of $100,000 when they leave, and you've done all the development side of things for the player. So yeah, it's a big issue. It's something that we have spoken about and will continue to speak about whilst it's a problem. And Daniel Cummins, which sparked this off, is obviously in that area of his contract where he can speak to other clubs. I hope he stays at Celtic. I'd love to see him making an appearance and, you know, just see what he can do. What is it we are producing right now through this academy? Now, Kenny Todd is on the Facebook. Thanks for joining us, Kenny. Even the VAR guys should declare what team they support. I think all officials should declare what team they support. I mean, that is the norm in European football, but unfortunately, Scotland is an anomaly to that, and they don't have to. Now, M. Young, in fact, let me get this right. They don't have to declare, Lawrence, but Willie Collum recently stated that if something comes to their attention, then they'll take it into account. Was it something to do with one of the refs whose nephews was in an academy somewhere? So they thought, right, we'll take that into consideration. But they don't take into consideration whether you've been a previous season ticket holder or fan of a football club.
So, let's think how tight that rule is. If something comes to our attention, we'll take it into consideration.
Mm-hmm.
What does it even mean, you know? And do what? You know, will you allow it? You know, so it's just basically a nothing rule, isn't it? It's kind of assault. Something comes to our attention, we'll take it into consideration. Not much to do on. Basically, isn't it? You know, we'll still have 90% Rangers fans, you know, in the refereeing fraternity. That's it, you know. But to go back to the young boys that's left, yet we are kind of losing them. But you've got to look and go, what's it? I suppose Celtic can point and go, well, look what's happening in their careers. The boys that went to Bayern, has anyone made it a success? You know,
no.
And Davy Hayes' grandson went down to Watford.
He's now in Saudi.
Yeah, so you're looking going, right, financially, it's maybe worked out for Ben Doak. The other guys are maybe more that they've got Celtic. Football-wise, it looks like Doak's now up for sale. About 25-30 million Liverpool are looking for him. But if you're a young player going, right, most of them will initially get more money, and many of them have ended up with a better career than if they'd stayed here. I don't think anyone could say that their career's been better. Anyone that have left. And listen, it's hard to make it at Celtic, but I think we'd probably get more backing from the fans here than they would at a new club. So it's maybe something that the young players need to think about. You know, the grass isn't always greener. Yeah, the money's normally more, but is it really going to be better for my career? You know, well, it's to Brendan and team to persuade young players that we've got a pathway. You know, Darren Day obviously is important, and say, look, this is what we've got. Because, you know, Brendan spoke about it. He said to Rocco, you know, you'll be the third choice striker.
Mm-hmm.
And if that wasn't enough for Rocco, I bet you Johnny Kenny would be biting your hand off if Brendan or Daniel Cummins would turn around and say to him, listen, I'm going to make you a third choice striker. They'd be over and in. And you know, there's rumours obviously strikers might be moving on. Who knows? But you know, we've had a lot of games. Johnny's gets chance, expect Daniel to get chance before the season's out. And then it's up to them to grab it, isn't it?
No, it definitely is, and we're going to speak about Kyogo and the comments that Brendan made yesterday. There are a few players going out on loan, but they're not development loans, are they? When you're looking at Odin Holm, we're looking for a pathway for him to leave the football club. Lewis Palmer, there was talk of that deal being on, off, or on. And of course, Stephen Welsh leaving the club on loan as well in this window. So I think it's good that the non-contributing players can use these loans as a means and a vehicle of leaving the football club. The young guys, they need to get out on loan like we have done in the past with Admira Wacker. Patrick Docherty, Lawrence, can we sing the Celtic songbook in the Skylark?
I said yes. You can sing the Celtic songbook, the Irish songbook. It's all allowed.
Well, it's yes, absolutely. There is a Celtic songbook, and I've been talking about the modern Celtic songbook for a wee while now, because even just last week we had Mark McMaster on This Is Acsom. Mark wrote "Boys in the Green." I don't know if anybody's heard that, but go and check it out. We actually played it on the show as well on Friday night. Mark McMaster wrote the song, and it put me in mind of not only the fact that we released a single, "The Glory and the Dream," recorded by the Wakes, but Kevin Miles and his song Celtic, My Heart and My Soul. But in recent times, as well as the Ellie Dixon Jota on the Wing song. I'd like to point out there's been a few others. We had a band
Maybe just quickly, when you say Jota on the Wing, have you seen the Tommy on the Wing video?
Tommy who?
Tommy Callahan.
Oh,
One at
yes.
Celtic Park with Haley Dixon, yes.
Yes,
cracking,
yes,
mate.
I did, because the dearly departed Tid, yes. Go and watch it. There is a shout out for his hometown of Cowdenbeath in there. The Modern Celtic Songbook, we had a band called The Chase on the show. It was incredible because they were from Nottingham. We'd done a session with them, check it out on the channel, and they turned up wearing Celtic gear. They were all mad Celtic fans. They've written a song called The Rebels Have Won. Go and check it out. And then a few weeks ago, we had Dictator on the show. They are from Bathgate, the Bathgate area, and they have released a song in homage to Henrik Larsson called HL7. So modern bands now are pinning their colours to the mast and writing songs about Celtic. Now, Brown Warrior talks about Tony Watt here. Watt never came out of the youth setup. We signed Watt for 100 grand, says Tony C. What happened with Tony Watt? Tony Watt didn't have a club, and he went to the Jimmy Johnston Academy, which is run by a good friend of a Celtic State of Mind. And from the academy, he got a number of offers. He ended up going to Airdrie, as was rightly stated there. And whilst at Airdrie, playing first-team football at 16, I'm going to say, he was offered trials at Liverpool, Celtic and Rangers. He went down to Liverpool, played a couple of bounce games for Liverpool, then came to Celtic and really performed well in a bounce game against Liverpool. And as you say, Tony, we signed him for 100 grand. I think Tony Mowbray would have been the manager at the time that we actually signed him. Barcelona happened, and the rest, as I say, is history. Now, Nick Fadley, not a Celtic fan, Nick, just pay a visit, saying hi, listening to what you guys have got to say. Ian, that's what it's all about. Fans from other clubs tune into a Celtic State of Mind to find out what us guys have to say. Now, we want to talk about Kyogo a wee bit. There's been lots of speculation about Kyogo this season. Manchester United, City rather, were apparently interested in him. And then there was that reported move to the MLS that got us all a wee bit concerned. But to be honest with you, until I went into the press conference yesterday to listen to that, I wasn't that concerned about Kyogo. I'm going to get Liam's thoughts in a minute, our Japanese correspondent. But Brendan said something in the press conference yesterday that I found really interesting, Ian. And it was around, if a player doesn't want to be here, leave. He was very blunt. Now, this was on the back of him bigging Kyogo up, going on about, people are going to talk about him not celebrating goals enough. Maybe he was too cold. Made a wee joke of it. And going on about how great he's been since Brendan came to the football club. But he followed that up. And it was basically, he was firing shots saying, if you didn't want to be at this football club, then you can leave. First question, was it connected to the Kyogo situation? Secondly, would you actually expect us to lose a player of that level and that standard, that importance to the first team in this window, Ian?
I've heard the rumours, as a few of us have, well, a lot of us have, in that announcement, that kind of own goal. It seemed a bit of a strange one. Obviously changed agencies last season as well, which was a bit of a worry. He doesn't seem like the type of guy who, that modern type of player who sort of, agitates for a move. So I wouldn't put it past us as a club to sell him. And that was my initial thought. I thought, look, he's almost 30. And if we can get, say 10 million for him, 15 million, he'd be gone in a shot. But I think that would probably spend at least that, if not more, to try and replace him. And that's been sort of proven in the past. But then obviously Brendan came out and made those comments about it. Sort of seemed that certain players don't want to be there. So if that's the case, it's kind of a leaf from Ange really. If you don't want to be there, leave. He did it with Giakoumakis. I really like Giakoumakis, as a lot of us did. And, it was unfortunate that he had Kyogo in front of him. But he went and we've moved on from him. We'll do the same with Kyogo. But, it's almost like, if he is going to leave that game against Ross County, I've been sort of screaming out personally, and I've said it in the group chat a few times, I'd love to see him and Ida given a chance up front on their own. And the amount of touches he got on the ball, he looked like he was back to his old self. I know you guys touched upon it on the bulletin yesterday. So a lot of us saw that, his creativity. He was playing with a smile on his face again. So I'd like to see him continue that, break that 100-goal barrier, and just be with us. Look at Nakamura. I mean, he retired when he was into his 40s, wasn't he? So potentially, Kyogo could play on for another 5-6 years, at a very high level. And I'd love us to see the benefit of that, but let's see. Fingers crossed he stays.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. Going into that press conference, and by the way, Jim Orr represented Acsom and represented us really well, got a nice smile out of Brendan Rodgers at the end. I think Rodgers seemed to loosen up when Jim started talking to him. That's the power of Jim Orr, Liam. Jim just gives you that kind of vibe, right? But I was really surprised at the comment yesterday, because up to that point, Liam, I'm sitting quite confident, and we've spoken about it on this show. We're not going to lose a big player in this window. The timing's not right. It's all about building and supplementing the squad, not taking one of the star men out and selling him. We don't need the money. But I think the point Brendan was making is, all right, all that's fine. But if a player wants to leave, he will leave. We will facilitate that move. Liam, the Japanese press works differently than ours, and generally speaking, it's not speculation and gossip. It's basically, if it's happening, it's happening. What's the vibe over there in relation to Kyogo? Has the last couple of weeks ruffled anybody's feathers?
The only reports I've seen in the media over here about Kyogo were about the MLS getting 2 Japanese players mixed up.
Right.
I mean, that was essentially what happened. It was another Japanese player who had signed, and he didn't even have a name that even resembled Kyogo's. It was just, they've signed a Japanese striker. Oh, it must be Kyogo Furuhashi. No, it's not. That is the only thing that's been covered over here, because, again, there is no firm link. I mean, the other thing about the Man City thing, I don't know if this is why it happened, but this is going to sound really, but it is true. Man City's ladies team signed a Japanese goalkeeper who, from a certain angle, looks quite a lot like Kyogo. And I think some people on Twitter got the wrong idea, got things confused, and before you know it, that was where the rumor kind of started, I think. But and I think the MLS thing was just another example of the same thing. Just somebody, not knowing Japanese football, not knowing who the players actually are, seeing a profile for somebody that was perhaps mislabeled with the wrong name, and has just ran with it without fact-checking it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, fact-checking is the big issue here. Because I was thinking about this the other day, actually. Last week, we were having a discussion about Reo Hatate. I don't know if you remember this. And somebody in the comments, I think it was perhaps Brown Warrior, please correct me if it was somebody else. He said, Hatate's only had 2 assists this season. And I said, God, if that's the case, that's not acceptable for a midfielder at his position. And, within 2 minutes, he came back with the 2 games and a valid source to back it up. And you know what I thought? There's a commenter on Acsom who's probably never studied journalism before, I'm going to guess. And he's already acting more professional than 95% of the actual media in Scotland. Because he says something, immediately backs it up with facts, and then backs it up with evidence.
Yep.
We do not have any of that in our mainstream media. That's the problem.
It is a massive problem, because it goes back to that whole thing where we're now in a scenario, Liam, where it's about being first, not being right. Yeah. Print the story. It's not about printing the truth, kind of thing, and that's a concern. And yeah, it looks as though there's been a few errors in relation to Celtic players in the past. But that moment when Brendan said that if a player's not happy, by the way, I agree with it wholeheartedly, Lawrence. I mean, if a player doesn't want to be at your football club, they can cause a lot of bother. And I know Kyogo's not the type to do that. But if someone and their head's not on the game and at that football club 100%, I agree with Brendan Rodgers. No matter who you are and what you bring to the party, you've got to leave. Yeah,
listen, I think when Brendan comes out and says that, he's saying it for a reason. I think there must be agitation in the background, either from agents or from players. If you look at the model, turning players over, who would you expect to lose in the summer? Probably Kyogo and Hatate. Right now, I'd rather lose Hatate than Kyogo, but the player wants to move, you've got to let him go as long as the money's right. I think that's what Brendan said. As long as the money's right. Well, that's one thing I think Brendan got first time when he was here. He certainly got the fees up that we were getting from down south. Certainly increased it. And if we get the fees, as long as he's getting to spend a sizable amount of it, and it looks, this season as if he's been back. Look at Engels. I know the Scottish press is. If you look at their output, you would think he had somewhat of a disastrous season so far. But it's been great for us. And if you sold Kyogo and got a striker of Engels quality, would you complain? A young player that's going to develop and take us to the next level, knowing that Kyogo didn't want to stay. And similarly, if it was Hatate that was to go, if he didn't want to stay.
Going to ask
I think we're probably more well served in midfield just now, though. You could probably afford to lose the tie more than you could Kyogo. What have you got left? As long as you keep him for the young boys game, we get through to the next stage. The league looks done and dusted. The Scottish Cup is ours anyway. I think there's a Celtic book of that title anyway.
The thing that I would be a wee bit concerned about, Lawrence, in relation to losing another of our Japanese imports, is that at one point we had 6. I'm going to ask Liam about this. We had 6 players who we'd bought from Japanese clubs. We've currently got half of them, all very, very important members of the first team. How difficult would it be for the others, Liam? I mean, can you imagine, right? And I don't want this to happen. I don't want Kyogo and Hatate to leave the football club. Kyogo's maybe the type of player that Brendan wants. Maybe Brendan does want to have a different striker at the football club. It'll all become clear soon enough. But what if he did leave? And what if Hatate did leave in the summer? What does that do to Maeda? Now, listen, I know it's not necessary, and loads of players move all over the world on their own. It's not necessary to have that wee group of players who all share the same kind of culture, all speak the same language at a football club. And he's been there long enough. Would it affect the remaining 2 or even 1 player, Liam, if that was to happen?
No. The simple answer is no. It wouldn't. I've read numerous stories from different teams down the years. Like I saw an interview with Rio Ferdinand a while ago, and he was talking about how when he was in the England team in the early 2000s, everyone was saying, "Oh, that team had so many good players. How come they never won anything?" And he said, "Well, you had these cliques. You had the Man United clique, you had the Chelsea clique, and the Liverpool clique, and they never talked to each other, right?" And I don't see that at Celtic. I don't see a Japanese clique. I don't see a Scottish clique. I just see a team because you can tell when Dyson scores a goal, when Kyogo scores a goal, it's not necessarily another Japanese player who runs to celebrate. It's the whole team has got that bond, and you can see. And no, I think if any of them did leave, and personally, I don't think anyone's going anywhere in this window. I think in the summer, the most likely one to go would be Hatate, and then possibly Kyogo. Dyson, it would take funny money for him to go, because you're not going to. You're lucky if there's 10 players on the planet that have got his engine, like genuinely, and what he brings to the team. So I really think it's. There are issues around will these players stay, will they go? But the fact that they all share the same nationality is not, in my opinion, an issue, because our club the team is a great unit, and you can see that. They showed that last season, because remember, it was only in the last maybe 3 months of the season that we really started to believe we were going to win the league. That was when it all came together, and it was that team spirit that brought us through a rough patch. And other teams do not have that spirit, which is why they are 15 points behind at the moment.
No, you're spot on, Liam. The thing is, and this is interesting itself, of the players that remain, our Japanese imports, the one who has played better than any of the others is Maeda under Brendan Rodgers. Tony Cassidy. Why was Brendan watching the recent Leipzig game, looking at players? Well, this was an interesting wee twist at the end of the press conference, Ian, right? Because he not only mentioned that he was watching the Leipzig game, he name-dropped Scottish football's most expensive player in the history of the game, Oliver Burke. He name dropped him. Now, this was on the back of Jim Orr's question. Jim Orr was talking about, look, it's hard enough for fans to have the kickoff times, a game every 3 days, strange kickoff times on a Saturday night. And Brendan opened up about how difficult it is for the players. And he acknowledged that it's also difficult for the fans. And as I say, loosened up. And then he goes, I was watching the Leipzig game the other night, and his point was they had just come back from a winter break and they looked fresh, whereas our players might be a bit jaded at this stage of the season. And we're going into 2 really, really important Champions League games, and players might be jaded. But he took it as an opportunity to drop the fact that Ollie Burke had scored a goal. Oliver Burke, 27 years of age he is now, and he's playing for Werder Bremen. He must have the best agent on the planet, Ollie Burke. And he's still scoring goals in German football. Square Sausage Mix says, not this window. We are talking, of course, about Kyogo leaving the football club. We don't want to see it happening. Barry Smith throws in Simon Donnelly, although Simon Donnelly, we signed him into the system. We signed him in from Queen's Park, who he had played for, and he went on, not an out-and-out striker, started off as a striker, played right side midfield for Tommy Burns in front of Jackie.
I think that second season at Hampden, because goal scoring date was against Wraith Rovers, scored in England 1-2 under McCarry, didn't he, when McCarry put in the first team? And then at Hampden, I don't think he scored that season, did he?
Didn't score a goal. Yeah,
he found it tough going second season.
Yep. We spoke to Sid on This Is Acsom, and he actually admitted that he thought the step up to first team football was easy peasy under Lou McCarry, and then he played a full season of football, didn't score a single goal. Went on to score 41 goals for Celtic. Not sure you would say he was a prolific goal scorer, having played almost 200 games for the football club. But yes, he was a young player that came through, despite the fact that we signed him from Queen's Park. We've also got the underwater cabbage salesman saying Burchell didn't come through the academy. We signed him. Willie McStay signed him. We didn't have an academy as such, but he did come through the youth teams, Mark Burchell. He came through the youth teams, and I thought he was electric. His pace was incredible. Jack Aitchison said, Stevie Boy, now playing the youngest ever striker, the youngest ever player to score for Celtic. Jack Aitchison now playing his trade for Exeter City in League One. So none of these guys for me were as prolific as the aforementioned Jerry Craney, being the bastard. Loved the guy, a rare beam of light in a dark time. Ian, not much was made of Greg Taylor's absence and the fact that even when Baye came off at the weekend, it was Liam Scales who played left back in his place. Was he just being rested? Will we see him returning to the starting 11 tonight, do you think?
Who knows? I presume so. After sort of Brendan bigging him up so much, I can't, unless there's been a fallout or something like that. But he doesn't seem the type. So yeah, I expect to see him back in the lineup. Whether he starts or whether it's Valle, I don't know. But yeah, I expect to see him back.
The thing with Greg Taylor as well, he's what we used to call back in the day a contract rebel, Liam. He's the type of player that if there's a first team player going to leave, it would be more likely to be him because of the contract situation and the fact that Celtic don't want to lose him for free in the summer. But unless we can get a replacement in the door, and we all know the replacement, I'm not going to hit the klaxon. Greg Taylor is a very, very important part of this team. And that game we're talking about, we've got the Kilmarnock game in the Cup, followed by Young Boys in the Champions League. It's a must-win game. We need the 3 points. Taylor's huge for that run of games for me. He's still the first choice left back. Was it just rotation, the fact he never played the other day, do you think, Liam?
I honestly don't know. It could be either. But what I would say is that for me, there's a core of players that we have right now who are not necessarily starters, but who are vital to the rest of the season. And I would say Taylor's one of them. Another one is Tony Ralston. Another one is Liam Scales. And when he's fit again, James Forrest. That's 4 guys that would not necessarily start if we had everybody fit. But 4 players who I think are crucial to the Celtic squad in terms of its ongoing success.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it'll be interesting because I think even when we spoke to Alan Morrison on Friday, we were talking about the fact Lawrence Abayi had come in and done really, really well. We're talking about youth players going out on loan to develop at other teams and then go back. That's exactly what Bayi is doing, but it's the other way about. He's coming to us as a development move with the view to him going back to Barcelona. It's a short-term thing. But I think he's played fairly well. Who do you play tonight, though, Lawrence? That's a big question.
Look, listen, I think Brendan's got all eyes in the young boys game, and he knows the team's looking jaded. And, you know, so getting December, I'm not too sure how many games I've played. It seems like 2 a week. So I'd probably stick by and try and keep Greg fresh for the young boys game. Maybe play him, you know, the weekend and bring Vaya off the bench. But you want to get him rested up. But just touching kind of on the Japanese players, it's probably better for us that we eventually sell one of them to a so-called big league. Because if you're a player in Japan and you look at Celtic, going, 6 guys went there. What happened to them? They're made as a mainstay in our team. Because let's be honest, most of them aren't Celtic fans. It's a lot of them are coming here with a view to their next move, getting the EPL or one of the bigger leagues. So when it's signed up 6 and none of them want to get a move, it might make it a wee bit more difficult to sell that dream in Japan again. So look, come here, you know, develop your career and move on. But anyway, back to your question. Yeah, I'd rest Taylor up. Keep him fresh for young boys. Maybe give him a half or 60 minutes at the weekend. Keep him fresh.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting take on it, and hopefully we will. I mean, I would keep Greg Taylor. I've said this before. I'd keep him, and he would be my number 2 behind Kieran Tierney. But we'll see how that develops as the transfer window goes on. Tony Cassidy would play Kasper Schmeichel, Alistair Johnson, Carter Vickers, Austin Trusty, Eck. Who's Eck? Alex Valle. Okay, Arne Kalmak and Rio, along with Kyogo, Adam. And Yang, obviously, Yang has been someone who's been discussed. Brendan Rodgers spoke about him at the press conference as well, Ian, in relation to the fact that I think he concedes. He acknowledges the fact that he needs that final ball. He needs to be able to create goals as a Celtic winger. But interestingly, he pointed out the fact that he turns up every single day and he's committed and he's brilliant at training. It's incredible how Brendan, and it's right to put so much emphasis on that, because I'm going to say it here, right? I think Palma is a far better player than Yang. I do. I think technically he's a far more gifted footballer, but he's never ever going to play, you know, a vital part in Brendan Rodgers' Celtic side for other reasons. Yang is going to get games. You know, we are desperate for a winger right now, and I know that Palma's had other issues, personal, losses, etc. But Yang's getting a game basically based on his application and his attitude. And so in the modern game, you know, ability is not always enough, and it certainly isn't for Brendan Rodgers. Yang's going to get more game time, but for me, he needs to do more. He needs to create more. Every single time I hear somebody going on about Yang, Yang played all right. Yang played okay. Yang did okay. He looked lively. But what did he create? He never created chances. Yes, he won the penalty kick. So Yang, for me, will play tonight, Ian, but again, it shines a light on the fact that we really need to strengthen in that area.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Yang is. I like the look of Yang when I see him, like a lot of sort of fans are saying. But it is his end product is not there. I think I know we're sort of crying out for wingers, as you say, but he'd be one that I'd send out on loan for a season somewhere to toughen him up, out of the spotlight a little bit from Celtic, because there is that pressure as well, and especially playing at home. For a player who's not sort of hitting the mark, the size from the crowd and things like the grumbles from the crowd can really play a part as well. So I'd get him out on loan, to be honest. I would have said the same about Palmer, but I think you're quite correct as well. He just hasn't got it to give in terms of that passion. I would like to have seen him tried in a number 10 role or through the middle, because I think our team has been lacking that a little bit, especially with Kyogo. I think if we had that sort of through the eye of a needle type player in the past season or two, I think we would have got more out of Kyogo. We would have got the ball up to him quicker, So it's a shame, really, with Palmer. But with Yang, obviously Brendan sees a lot in him, and he'll hang around for a little bit longer at least. But I'd like to see him go out on loan, maybe to another SPL team.
Yeah, if we bring in a winger this window, I think that would be the best move for him. I mean, you asked the question, Liam, and this goes to biases. It goes to one of the conversations we had about giving youth a chance, etc. Was Mikey Johnston any worse than Jan? What do you reckon?
I don't think he was any worse, definitely. No, but I think there are certain players that you can see they're good players, but they're just not necessarily going to be good players at Celtic. And I think Mikey Johnson was a classic example of that. Went down south and was brilliant on his loan spell. Came back and again just couldn't really do that, do enough to show that he could break through. Because the problem with Celtic now, because our first team is so strong, you can't just be a good player to get into the first team. You've got to be exceptional, because you've got to be looking to displace a Kuhn or a Maeda, right? Yang isn't going to do that now. Mikey Johnson couldn't do that at the time. So ultimately, they're both pretty much in the same boat as far as I'm concerned. I think that there's a debate to be had as to who's the better player, but I think in the grand scheme of things, they're both going to be people who we could see there's a player there, but it's no quite enough for what Celtic need at this particular time with this particular shape of team. And we'll all be really frustrated because I'll bet Yang will go somewhere else in a couple of years and be absolutely brilliant. And we'll be thinking, why couldn't he do that at Celtic?
So many players, they tear it up elsewhere. Jungle Lion points out that Dundee have loads of injuries, so no mercy. Always great to see you, Jungle Lion. And young Oliver Burke, Jay Conley, Jay Larkin. Young Oliver Burke, and I keep saying this because I think it is one of the most absurd things in the history of Scottish football, has cost more money in combined transfer fees than any other Scottish footballer. His transfers have totalled an incredible €36.9 million. Ladies and gents, just let that sink in. He is at the top of the list. Second is Jordan Rhodes on 34.7 million, followed by Scott McTominay, 30.5, Kieran Tierney, 28.4, and unbelievably, Duncan Ferguson, 28.3 million euros. And his moves came quite a bit before the silly money that we're talking about right now. Your maw, Ollie Burke, faster than the milkman's boy, but a first touch like a Wayne playing with a balloon. That's like my first touch as well. McLaughlin P, do you remember Chris Hay? Yes, I do. I remember him scoring a brace against Man United. I think Lawrence is thinking about that game as well. Remember that?
Yeah, well, just thinking him and Paul DeLeach in the reserves together, and they got get a bit of run out of the first team now and again, didn't they?
They did.
When you Jim Slavin and Malky at the back, didn't you? In that team?
Big Jim. Barry Smith at right back made a couple of appearances for the first team. We interviewed him actually on the channel. Check it out on the archive on YouTube. Love It says, we Jinky loved a song or two. We are, of course, talking about the Skylark Bar. Best entertainer the club ever had with his dribbling skills. He was a footballer who wanted to be a singer. I've said it time and time again, Celtic's most entertaining player. The debate obviously will roll on forever about who the greatest player was. He was voted Celtic's greatest ever player, but I think you've got to have the likes of Jimmy McGrory in that equation as well. Sid linked up with Jackie McNamara well on the right, yes, and they're still very, very close friends as well. Double Denim, good to see you. We'll be seeing a wee bit more of Double Denim tonight for the game. If Kyogo leaves, then does Ida have what it takes to lead the line? This is quite a good question. Can Kenny step up a second choice? Do we move Maeda to the striker role? Who then plays left wing? Do we sign Fitzgarden, who is perennially linked to a move to Glasgow? Is Ida, Ian, is he the player to lead the line? I mean, listen, he's not as prolific as he was last season, but I don't think certainly the gaffer's panicking about it. I shared a wee clip with you guys earlier on about a media broadcaster, I think in Ireland, going on about Ida getting stick from Celtic fans. I've not heard any stick from Celtic fans in relation to Ida. He's having a bit of a goal drought, Ian. Is he a number one striker? We would obviously need to bring somebody else in if Kyogo was to leave.
I think he is. And I think when he was taken off at the weekend, I think it was maybe a bit harsh. He looked a bit upset, whether he was carrying a knock, possibly. But I think if had he stayed on, I think he would have got his goal, maybe a couple. It looked like it was a sort of a tactical masterstroke when Brendan made the changes at half-time. ended up winning 4-1. But I do think that it was coming. I think he was a couple of times he put a through ball through and it was just not quite strong enough. There's a couple of little things, I think it was just a combination of the pitch being frozen and a nightmare, it being Baltic for all the players, but coming in from not starting every week to try and get, he just needs a run of games. He's got everything, I think, and people say he's not very good in the air. Remember last season, some of the bullet headers he scored some decent headers for Ireland as well. So I think we've got a really gem of a player, but he just needs time. So yeah, I'm all in on Ida.
I agree with you, and I think there's a lot of kind of like knee-jerk reactions, particularly from people who don't really have their eyes and ears on Celtic. They're just looking at his goal tally and thinking, oh, he's in a hard time. That equals he's getting flack from the Celtic fans, which is not true. You mentioned a frozen pitch, which brings back a wee story that Simon Donnelly told me about Chris Hay, so we can link it into some of the comments here. Neely Mockham was looking out on the park. There was a game that night, and Simon Donnelly was on the ground staff, as was Chris Hay, and he handed a thermometer to Chris Hay and goes, go and measure the temperature of that park. We need to tell the ref if the game can go ahead tonight. And Chris Hay believed him and did it, and came back with a temperature on the thermostat. So there you go. Not the brightest, apparently, according to Simon Donnelly, Chris Hay. He left and became a striker at Swindon Town, St Johnstone and Stirling Albion. That's the 3 teams that he played for after Celtic. I'm going to get some predictions from you guys. We're going to be covering the game as normal tonight, 30 minutes before kickoff. I will be joined by Kevin McCluskey and Chris McElwain, and hopefully we'll be happy with an 18-point lead after tonight's game. Liam Carrigan, give me a prediction for tonight.
I think we'll win 3-1.
3-1, says Liam. Lawrence.
1-0 half time, mate. 4-0 full time. Brendan Rodgers special.
I would take that. And Ian Conroy, what do you reckon?
2-1. George.
2-1, yeah, tight. I think Docherty's an excellent manager. I do think they'll get a goal. I agree with you and Liam, but I do think we'll come through it without too much issue or agitation. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved today. It's a Tuesday afternoon, and we're 1,600 or 1,700 strong on a live stream. We're here every day, so join us at 12:30 on all the platforms. The only one I don't think we're on at the moment is Blue Sky, because they don't like you stream on there, but I'm pretty sure they will introduce that at some time in the future. Acsom is on Blue Sky, Twitch, LinkedIn, Instagram, X. What else, lads? Everything. Facebook.
Even see us live sometimes.
You can come and see us. What a beautiful link in that is. Yeah, you can come and see us live. John Hartson's our next guest. End of the month at Gracie's. Link under the video. Join us 30 minutes before kickoff tonight on a Celtic State of Mind.